Thank you, Dale. I call to order the Town Council School Committee Budget Work Session. This is our fourth, and the date is Wednesday, March 12th, and the time is 7:10. If we could please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Tonight on the agenda is for discussion for the fiscal year 2014-15 school fund transfer, and then we always put other matters of interest and concern on the agenda. Before I turn the microphone over to Chair Maureen Cotter, I just have a quick announcement for the Town Council and for Steve Alford. I got a phone call this afternoon from Ken Kennerson. He is a member of the Elks, and he would like all of us to jot down the date for the senior dance. They started this last year, and it is to honor our senior citizens in town. So it is May 8th, and he's hoping that we can have full town council. I know he's not able to attend last year. And he has a proclamation, and he's working with our senior center. So that is May 8th, the senior dance to honor our senior citizens here in South Kingstown. And the invitation also is extended to Mr. Alford. So he's going to be getting us information. Dale, he said he's going to get together a proclamation and drop it off and work with you. So, all right, with that said, I would like to turn the microphone over to Maureen Cotter, Chair of the School Committee. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I think I've turned it on. Well, a couple of things. One is Mr. Jackson is not here due to work, and I just got a text from Dr. Mega that he is also still at work. He's at the hospital. I expect Mr. Miller to arrive, and I'm not sure about Mr. Daly LaBelle. But anyhow, I'd like to thank you for your unwavering support of our school programs. We really do appreciate the relationship that we have with the Town Council. I'd like to point out that even though we are the biggest loser of the funding formula, we have not reduced student programs. In fact, we've been growing programs for students. We have a very solid educational strategic plan, and we are accomplishing great things, and we appreciate your partnership in this work. We had 3 budget priorities, just as we did last year. One is to ensure all students have access to a regular education curriculum, to increase instructional rigor and best practice instruction, and ensure that all of our students are propelling forward. So decisions were made based on the students, based on data, and based on best practices. And our focus has been to minimize impact on students or on the educational core, while maintaining and supporting programs in keeping with community values. And before turning it over to the superintendent, I would just like to give kudos to the superintendent and also to Mr. Rishat for a great job in preparing the budget, and certainly I'd like to thank the town staff. They have a great working relationship. I'm sure I'm sure, they have their struggles, but I'm very proud of this budget, and I'm very proud of the opportunity to be in close partnership with you.
Thank you. Steve, did you have anything to say before Kristen?
The only comment that I would make is that we received the superintendent's and school committee's budget, and in the review we asked for 2 adjustments, which I believe were approved by the school committee last evening. And those 2 adjustments were, one on the revenue side, which was to increase the funds forwarded to the 2014-15 year from what had been recommended at $235,000 up to $400,000, and that was so that it would provide for 1/3 of what all available funds would be, net of the changes that we talked about at capital budget, the drawdowns, and also not taking into consideration any surplus that may occur as of June 30 of 2013. We also, in our review, recommended that there be a reduction of $335,000 in the health care appropriation for the 14-15 year. The combination of that revenue increase and expenditure decrease amounted to a $500,000 reduction being available in the transfer in property taxes. With that $500,000 reduction from what had been requested by the school committee, it dropped the tax increase that's necessary to fund the 14-15 year budget to $482,628, or 0.98% as a levy growth for the school department. If you recall, when we put the pro forma together, as we have traditionally done over the past 3 years, we used a 2% levy growth. And again, I think both Kristen and I gave assurances that that was a number to establish the pro forma rather than a number that we were trying to hit in the final budget. And I think that by the cooperation that we've received to get it down below 1%, I think provides for an appropriate response to what the economic conditions are in the community. So those are the only comments that I wanted to make. If there's questions council has on the actions that I took on the budget, I'd be glad to address them. If there aren't, I'd ask that you provide the superintendent the floor.
Any questions here from the town council?
I have questions.
Jim, I think was first, and then Meg, and then we'll go to the school committee if they have any questions.
Yeah, Kristen, help me if I'm wrong. During our discussion over the last few months, the $308,000 for the group home aid, did you not state that that was way underfunded for what the per-child cost was? I'm trying to remember what our arithmetic language was in regards to that.
Yes, Mr. O'Neill, you're correct. It's almost double that cost, actually. And last evening, with the help of Representative Tanzi, the school committee entertained the notion of a resolution on group home aid to try to ensure that at least the funding that we received last year would be supported again by the state.
The reason that number is where it is it also part of the education funding formula that they treat the group aid differently for our community than, let's say, Providence?
It's outside the funding formula, so it's not guaranteed to be included every year.
Okay, Meg.
It's not even a question, I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing that if you're going back to 2012 to 2013, and then if you look at 2014 to 15, we seem pretty flat. If you look at last year, we're only going up slightly, so I know the enrollment has gone down, so I think you're keeping things in line, and I'm very pleased to see that.
Thank you. It's difficult. We have had a slight decrease in enrollment last year, approximately 17 students. And when we have a decrease in enrollment, that happens throughout the district. So they don't come in little packages where it's able to reduce funding to one classroom. So that is difficult. But we certainly want to be mindful of as Mr. Alfred stated, the economic challenges of the folks in the community. And so we're trying our best to be mindful of that.
Costs always go up, so kudos to you for trying to keep things in line. That's great. It's really great to see that.
Any other questions here from the town council? Jim?
Yes, Steve, or John, on the expense side here, we've got $688,000 in equipment, and we talked about it being $900,000. How did we net down to that number? What was, help me out with that.
I think they're talking about the computers, John.
The computers. So the computers were put into that equipment, and there's two components in there. There was $400,000 to support cots for the Curtis Corner School, and then $100,000 for the one-to-one pilot initiative at the high school.
I can actually go into more detail when I do my presentation, because I have a slide on each of those pieces, if
All right, any other comments from town council with Steve's introduction, or any questions with Steve's introduction from the school committee? Okay, with that said, Kristen, you have the floor. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm mindful every time that I bring the budget forward to put very much in front of our conversation our mission, that we really try our very best to work in partnership with our families and our entire educational community to educate and engage all of our students with the knowledge and skills necessary to ensure readiness in success in college and career. And next. Sorry.
Please.
I had the laptop last time, so I'm unsure, but please, Mr. Alfred, would you mind? Thank you. These are our instructional priorities that come from our district theory of action. A theory of action links the strategic plan to your instructional goals. And we have three components of our instructional priorities, which are ensuring that all students have access to the regular education curriculum, and we do that by eliminating lower level class sizes, ensuring that all students have access to at least a regular curriculum, and then beyond, so higher level curriculum, a curriculum of rigor. Also increasing collaborative classrooms, and that would be with a regular education teacher and a special educator or an English language learner teacher. Increasing supports to students and staff, that would be technology, professional development, and supplies. Increase instructional rigor and best practice instruction. We've made an investment in best practices in reading, writing workshop, math workshop, technology, preschool, alternative high school and credit recovery, world language early access, and Algebra 1 early access. And ensuring that all students are propelling forward through differentiated instruction, progress monitoring through RTI, and specialized leadership in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and also in reading. And so all of these items are reflected in this budget and have all gone from several years ago being theoretical to now being operational, which is very, very exciting, and I think speaks to what Dr. Carter described as being able to, even with very little funding and coming in from the state, being able to grow programs and making certain that our students still have their very best. In the 2014-15 budget request from the school committee, the anticipated expenditures for salary, benefits, professional services, et cetera, was in the amount of $58,937,473, offset by a revenue of state aid anticipated $7,510,096. Our group home aid already referenced by Mr. O'Neill. An additional $335,000 reduction in health care, increase in the undesignated fund balance contribution used as revenue already specified by the manager, which would result in a 0.98 property tax appropriation. And in order to create a balanced budget, and I'm sorry, I was off, $58,602,000, and then the balanced budget includes a $761,000 worth of reductions. And although it's not possible for us to identify exactly which staffing position, and these are all staffing reductions, we are able to identify in areas. We are largely staffed by enrollment and by student choice. And so in the area of special education, we are experiencing within our enrollment decline and lower caseloads, we know that we can reduce in certain areas, but special education caseloads are IEP driven. Those IEPs have not been designed yet, but we know based upon a review of the entire district special education plans to date that we will be able to reduce approximately 3 positions, and that's what's reflected here. So although it's not equivalent to FTEs for you, it is a reduction in a dollar amount that is a commitment on our behalf. In the area of specialists, itinerant staff, the rationale is because of the lower enrollment, lower caseloads, and lower sections. We know that we have elementary sections are based on contractual class size obligations. And so even if I'm projecting based on how many students I may have in a particular first grade this year and how they will age up next year to a second grade cohort, if little ones move into a particular neighborhood and they enroll, then we need to add another section. And so I can't know with complete assurity today exactly how many I will have next year, but we do what's called a cohort survival method. And so by trending over a 3-year period to a 5-year period, we can predict with a high degree of confidence. And I know that I will be able to reduce one elementary section due to a trend in student enrollment decline at least one elementary school. In terms of high school sections, we know that based on class size, student choice, and student enrollment decline, we will be able to reduce the equivalent of 1 FTE of a high school section. Now, will that be 1 FTE in a particular subject area? That's unlikely. It could end up being a 0.2 or a class in a variety of different subject areas. So there is no student program effect. It's not an intent to eliminate a student program. It's when students sign up, courses run based on the most popular choices based on student need and student interest. Maintenance is a reduction. It's a straight reduction. It's an area that we're taking because you get to the point where everything is important, and it's an area that we have we weren't taking in the last 2 years. And teacher assistant and clerical, because we have reduced special education teacher, in most cases there is a teacher assistant that is accompanying that special education teacher, and or there may be a clerical position that was added that is no longer needed this year. So the reduction is $761,000, and I've listed our strategic plan objective that grounds our work, that we need to remind ourselves to ensure that our district budget and our school budgets are responsive and relevant so that we're maximizing student achievement. And so when we're making these reductions, when I'm recommending these reductions, they're not taken lightly. We make certain that we're taking a look at the data, the caseloads. I look at every single class section, every department section, UCOA data. We look at it with our administrative team. We look at a variety of data, and a lot, unfortunately, is based on student enrollment decline, which we're hoping to change with all of our wonderful programs. We're hoping to lure students to our community. We also want to ensure that our budget is, that we're being mindful about annually investing in student achievement priorities. So it's important that with the money we have, that we intentionally invest in the most important programs for students. The next slide shows the technology requirements that I think will begin to answer some of Mr. O'Neill's questions regarding the technology infusion at the middle level. We plan to buy laptop carts at Curtis Corner Middle School for each core subject area classroom. So every English teacher, math teacher, science teacher, and social studies teacher will have laptops. It will be there all day, every day, for daily instruction and ongoing assessments. So this would be, teacher-made assessments. That could be interim assessments. But certainly, as students are drafting their writing, they will no longer need to write it on a piece of paper and then transcribe it onto the laptop, which we don't do in our daily work. We draft on the computers largely. And that will help them for career and college readiness skills. students aren't going into the college classrooms with their pads. They're going into the college classrooms with their laptops. And that's a skill that we need to start working on in middle school. It's sort of a double-edged piece that we're working on that while we're launching a pilot at the high school for a one-to-one program. It's easier to start a program like this at the middle level with laptop carts because they've already started reaching out to the technology department and investing in laptop carts on their own in some of the departments. And so, and right now they're sharing. So it's like, I have the laptop cart today and you get the laptop cart tomorrow, and it's unreasonable to ask them to share any longer. So the idea is that all students will be able to access the laptops here, and then they can use it for writing and research and project creation. They can email their homework to themselves at home, and then when they're at home, they can email their homework to themselves back at school, pull it up on the laptop, and there will be no more of the, I forgot my homework at home, darn, I don't have it anymore. And there will be a lot more communication back and forth. We have our teachers work really hard on school and team websites at Curtis Corner. They'll be able to really utilize those much more effectively than they're even doing now. Mrs. Lisi and the professional development subcommittee for the school committee worked really hard having a 21st century learning work session on technology, and we talked about outcomes, jobs that these youngsters are going to have, and how technology it's impossible to have these youngsters enter the workforce and not have skills in technology. And we've had community conversations about technology. Technology is lacking at Curtis Corner. When you walk into Broad Rock School, we have computers. When we walk into the high school, there are computers. And there are even more computers at the elementary schools. There have not been an infusion at Curtis Corner. So in order to support this initiative to meet the instructional priorities, the cost is $400,000. The data from the teacher job satisfaction survey indicates that our teachers need and desire a technology, professional development, and support above and beyond this. If this was never happening, they didn't know about this when they took that survey. And so we took a look at what other departments in the state and in surrounding states were doing, and one of some of them are buying many, many more technology support personnel. We can't afford to do that, unfortunately. And so one of the things that we are creatively looking towards, it's happening in some districts in Massachusetts, is offering stipends to teachers who have a background in technology to be that go-to person in the school to do the problem-solving hardware support, to free up some of our technology personnel to do the higher level technology problem-solving and troubleshooting. It's a very on-site, quick, cost-effective way to troubleshoot. That's the input that we've received. It's not very expensive. It's certainly worth a try. And if you've ever had difficulty with technology, it's very frustrating if you're sort of on a roll, you're working on something, and you're stuck. Imagine having 24 other little bodies in the room, and you're working on technology, and you're stuck. And so we want to make sure that if teachers are working on their technology, that they're supported. Thank you.
I can't get over the yellow pad thing.
Oh, the yellow pad?
There's no way I'm giving it
Well,
up.
let me tell you, I thought Mrs. Cotter was going to zunk me because at meetings, I still can't get away from it. So while we're doing the infusion at the middle level, we also are planning a one-to-one technology pilot in this budget at the high school level. A pilot included at 9th grade only, 125 units or laptops, and this was sort of vetted out at a technology work session. And so that's why there are some of the specifics: 4-year warranty, 4-year protection plan for spills and theft and drops and protective skin, and the projected hardware cost would be $98,000. in order to, these would not be going home the very first year. These would be for teachers to learn to work with in the classroom, but the idea is they would be learning to use them in a very different way, because the idea would be, we want to explore having students take them home the very next year. Is that a possibility? And leave it in the hands of our expert teachers to tell us what would need to happen in order to make that work. And it's certainly happening throughout the state and throughout the nation. And we would have virtually no risk with the hardware being lost or dropped because of the protection plan. We would simply get a new one. The idea would be, if the pilot goes well, that this laptop would be given to a ninth grader and would stay with that ninth grader for 4 years, potentially. And that when the ninth grader graduates, we could repurpose that laptop, if it was still alive, for a younger student, for a non-high school student. But that every ninth grader could be, conceptually in the future, given their own laptop when they arrive at South Kingstown High School, and they would have laptops to go back and forth with them to school and home for their career. And that will make that whole technological literacy concept alive in our schools. That is such a higher level of technology thinking, planning, curriculum, and instruction than just having the hardware available in your classroom. Teachers throughout our district have hardware available in our classroom now. That certainly needs support, but it's a different type of support than what I'm talking about here. So that's going to take the help of a technology coach. And the technology coach is going to get these teachers thinking about digital curriculum, not just using textbooks, but also using YouTube and National Geographic magazine online, and web-based searches and wiki spaces and Google Docs, and how do all these pieces work together. And that's going to take some training, and it's going to take some volunteers. And so Mr. McCarthy has put out an application to look for 4 teachers who are willing to embrace this work. In addition, it would be the 4 core department chairs, because we need to make sure that the leaders in our content areas are as trained as the folks that are willing to, to jump in, and the administrators in the building. So this technology coach would be supporting those folks. What are the potential savings? SCEF has met with Pauline Lisi and I, our assistant superintendent, and I preliminarily, and said they would love to try to partner with us in this effort. And they have made a sort of, I'm going to say, a soft commitment to try to raise approximately $20,000 to help with this effort. I can't count on that right now, so I need to budget for that. If I can count on that money, I would put that into the budget to offset for next year, for the year 1 full implementation, if you will. If the recommendation of this pilot group were to be to go forward with year 1 implementation, then year 1, I would be able to start eventually phasing out some of the high school computer labs, because every kid is going to have a laptop, and they're going to carry them with them everywhere, so that when they get to the business lab, they don't need that computer anymore. I can move those to a different school, instead of having to buy computers for those schools. I would need fewer network drops and switches. We would reduce copier costs and paper costs. And people who are professionals are not going to be making copies, which no one likes to make copies. And it will reduce our textbook costs and our reliance on textbooks. So what districts throughout the nation are finding is that the students are more engaged, teachers are, enjoying the digital content, and that it's less laborious on the professionals, and it ends up being not an expensive endeavor.
Can I ask a question about this? What about the students that have their own laptops? Would you encourage them to use those?
So
It's like when you go to college, the kids go in, one of the
Right.
first things they do is talk to you about what kind of technology they need and
So
what kind of
we
computer.
explored that first about 2 years ago. We started that actually October 2012. We explored the BYOD conversation, bring your own device. That actually came out of CELAC meeting, Language-Based Disability Group, and parents whose kids, quite frankly, got Kindles for Christmas and holidays and birthdays. And they said, I don't want to bring lug textbooks back and forth anymore and read big reading novels. They load it on their Kindle. Why can't we bring our Kindle? Why can't my youngster bring their iPad? Why can't they bring their own personal laptop to school? And so when we started exploring this with our principals, we all had handbooks that inside the handbooks it said, you may not bring your own personal electronic devices into the buildings. And there was language from long ago about beepers that said, if you bring these in, we're frightened that it might set off some sort of a problem for safety. And we found out that was untrue. It was only a beeper. And so after exploration, we brought in community conversations to talk about BYOD. And we had a community conversation in October of 2012. We sent out surveys, and we found that there were community members were concerned about certain components of equity, for example. They were worried that if some kids had laptops and iPads and other kids didn't have access to these, would there be an imbalance in a public school with the opportunity to access the regular education curriculum? We had concerns about the fact that you're bringing in your personal device from home, and now is there liability for us? Whereas if you're breaking the laptop that I described in the one-to-one, we have a protection plan that we're agreeing to. Teachers were concerned that if they're starting their English class and John's trying to access the curriculum with his iPhone, and I'm trying with my Kindle, and Maureen's trying with her laptop, and it's not working because I haven't downloaded Adobe, and whatnot, then the teacher could be spending quite a bit of time sort of going around trying to figure out if these devices are compatible. We talked about lots of different pieces, and the community concerns that came out in the survey. Another one was safety. If with our devices, the technology director assured the school committee that they're accessing our network through our device. They have to sign on to our internet user agreement, and they're signing off. And then he can block certain sites that would be dangerous, and parents would feel were inappropriate. But if you bring in your iPhone or you bring in your own iPad and you're trying to connect as a guest, we can't do that, especially if you have your own 3G network attached to it. And so parents expressed great concern with that. And trying to think what some of the other pieces were. We had another community conversation, which was based on all of the very good components and the very concerning components that came up from the families about the bring your own device concept. And as a result of the bring your own device conversations, the staff members started to transition to learning about one-to-one technology, where it seemed that everybody was on an even playing field, where there was no concern about liability, where there was no concern about different platforms, there was no equity, there was no danger, there was no, everyone was even. And we were sure that whatever the teachers were designing, we could support. And if we were going to be using it for instruction or assessment, Doug would be able to know if it would be able to support that instruction or assessment, so that when the teacher was ready to, queue up a YouTube video, it wouldn't fail, and then he or she is left without, the curriculum for the day. Like, what am I going to do now? That's what I planned on doing today. So in a nutshell, it seemed like a very exciting opportunity, but it wasn't going to work out. Our community didn't feel as if it was for them.
So that hardware cost is going to be there every year?
Yes, it would be a recurring cost, but it would be offset by the costs that we are already paying to buy technology for the high school anyway, and for some of our copying costs and paper costs and textbook costs. So we don't expect a significant jump after year one in our, we wouldn't buy a technology coach again. and we wouldn't see a significant rise after year one in our overall P account money. But there would be, that first year, people are still going to want to buy a textbook because they haven't gotten used to this yet.
Kristen? I just have a question. I'm going to move to Jonathan. Textbooks, are they online now? Have they moved to
are.
that?
Yes,
Was
some
that
are.
done within the past year or two, or?
So we are transitioning in a variety of ways. So we have clearly, this year especially, made a conscious effort to encourage another look if department chair or principals, grade level teams are recommending the purchase of a paper-bound textbook. Because what we know is that there's no real way to update that with fidelity. And it seems to be, you know, a dead-end cost. And so what we're saying is some things are free, like CK12 is free, and a lot of the Khan Academy videos and a lot of the, especially the social studies and English curriculum reading materials are free and available, and there have been a lot of philanthropic and literate pushes throughout the nation to be able to create clearinghouses of all of this free educational content. That's just continuing to grow every single day. In addition to that, there are online textbooks. Now those, there is a fee. It can sometimes be more expensive, but the only piece that you're sort of guaranteed is that if all of a sudden, you know, the solar system rearranges and we've decided to recategorize things, today we will have the most accurate, you know, information, and we don't have to live with, you know, inaccurate textbooks. And that especially can hold true in science and social studies, as you know. I mean, math seems to be math for a good long time, but science and social studies, that can change on you fairly quickly. So yes, that is happening. Yes, I personally have had conversations with department chair this year where we are going out to other high schools and talking to other department chair about, you know, digital content and what that can look like, what the opportunities are, what the limitations are. But it's a transition. So the technology coach is helping. Other districts are helping. We're partnering. And RIDE is helping. They're offering a lot of, they offer a really wonderful all-day innovation conference where our teachers have actually presented this year in West Kingston and the high school, and we're learning a lot. So it is exciting, but it's new. So we can't totally rely on it this year, but we are definitely taking great steps.
And my last question, just to follow up on the textbooks, the school committee used to have a policy where they used to, every 7 years, I believe, relook at, you know, a different department head. So is that policy still in place, or how will you go through once we convert to electronic textbooks, if that's the choice for each department? Is that cycle still 7 years, or?
Department, like the curriculum and materials for each department?
Right, it used to be 7 years, right, Scott?
So I would say that, I mean, that's changing, because I would say that that's the bare minimum in terms of the amount of time. When you have free content, it changes the game. And so in science in particular, we're moving into things like probes and more technology and, you know, dissection materials that are, you know, technology-based. So it's harder to do that. I can't wait 7 years to have them do that, but
Update your policy.
But we can't do it every single year for every single department either. So I think that it's going to be, you know, a part of our transition.
Thank you. Jonathan?
I just, am I on? Yeah, okay. Just where Mr. Alford was bringing up that this is a recurring cost, just want to point out that that's for 125 units, so I don't know what our average class size is, 220, 230, I think, in that range. So just just so that, you know, kind of you're aware that 98,000 won't really be the number. if this pilot becomes adopted. It might not be quite twice that, but maybe it's 180 or 190,000, I guess.
Replenish the labs.
Please, Carol.
Kristen, is the 98,000 for the 125 laptops?
Yes, but,
So, and the intent is every year to buy, if the pilot works, another 125 or whatever the amount of students are.
the intent is to buy enough for the cohort of the ninth grade learners,
Right.
but we're not going to be, so right now, we're buying the 125, and we're replenishing the labs. So you see in your capital plan that we replenish the labs. That won't happen. So we offset that, and we're also using the offsets of the copiers. So it won't be a straight figure. It'll likely be the difference between 98 and 200. So it'll, what was our, we had an exact figure at the technology meeting.
And the technology coach, is that a teaching position? Yep.
Right, that's what, right,
Yeah, and then offset by the replenishment.
right. So we would be doubling the 98 minus the replenishment of the labs, minus the offset for textbooks, supplies, and copy materials. And I'm sorry, I missed that last question, I apologize. Okay.
The technology coach is a teaching position.
Technology coach is a teaching position. We don't anticipate that the high school, I mean, certainly the pilot program could give me different information, but I'm not anticipating another technology coach for the high school.
Okay, we're going to move on?
Certainly. So although this slide is not a part of the budget per se, I don't want folks to be surprised that we do budget neutral position changes. So I label this informational outside of the actual budget vote because, you know, I have the discretion to move around from one teaching position to another teaching positions, but I don't want folks to be surprised by that. So I'm very transparent as we possibly can be at this early time of year. And so here's what the plan is. At the middle level, it is my intent, as we have been articulating for a few years, to infuse more world language into our school system. So particularly starting at the 8th grade. We did a survey at the Curtis Corner Middle School asking families, would you like to see year 1 high school world language offered in grade 8? Overwhelmingly, families said yes. We asked them, if you were given a choice, what would that language be? Overwhelmingly, they said Spanish. We drilled down to, what would your second option be? They said French. And so we would not be adding anything because a child's schedule is only so big. So we'd have to offset another teaching position in order to offer this. And for the first time, Curtis Corner youngsters would choose their electives much as they do at the high school. Remember that last year we offered accelerated 7th math in addition to accelerated 8th math. We had not had that previously. And so we are offering different options for higher level options for students. And so you're seeing that we will be reducing an itinerant position. What itinerant position? I don't know yet, because kids have not selected their courses. But a little, pamphlet will go home, and it will be returned. Child and their family members will choose, and then we'll try our best to meet their needs, and then we'll fill their world language request. Reading scores, reading is doing really well at Curtis Corner. And so the intent is to reduce a reading professional at that school, and our writing needs some support. So the intent would be to add a writing teacher. At the high school, this isn't really a switch, but it is within the same department. We are creating a program. We have a program at the alternative high school in a math workshop and a reading workshop. That's been very, very successful. We recaptured credits for lots of students, and we actually grew a program for our most capable learners this January, which was a virtual project program where youngsters were identified and selected programs in Latin and Biology 2 and could be Spanish 5, programs we don't currently offer at our high school because we had youngsters who in the past couldn't participate in these programs and would have to, at the expense of their families, take a course at CCRI on their own time after school, which interferes with their jobs or their after-school clubs or sporting events, music programs. So we're now investing in transitioning a program over for science. Another program for English is going to be a writing lab. We're under the leadership of Mike Alper, who is our English department chair, and Rob Young, the coordinator of the alternative high school. We're working with University of Rhode Island to create a writing lab. So the youngsters of all writing abilities, youngsters who struggle in writing and youngsters who want to be really perfect their level of writing, maybe they want to go into journalism, maybe they want to be a writer, they can take a course in writing, and they will just be at their own pace working on their own writing in a coaching lab type model, very similar to URI. So an English teacher is not going to be laid off or made to apply or move over. They're just going to teach in a different program under the leadership of the same department. Same thing is going to happen with a guidance member, the guidance personnel. They're going to work with Rose Majika to identify somebody who's interested in going over and working at the alternative high school with Rob. And they're also going to man what's called a testing center that we learned about when we were visiting Stevenson High School to learn about like a credit recovery program testing center, where if youngsters were ready to take a test and it wasn't appropriate in the middle of their testing center day, they can work with the guidance counselor to go in and retest now. Really good example is if your child was absent from school on a particular day, they missed what was going on in math, teacher helped them after school, now they're ready to take the test. They don't want to miss another day of school, they want to test and they want to get back in the classroom. They can go over during like a Wednesday morning when the teachers are doing common planning time, go take their test. They want to go over, grab their lunch, quickly go over and retest, the testing center is open. And we have plans to look at that testing center in the future. Maybe that's an area that we can use when we expand our programs in the summer and our current Saturday school. We are going to switch a central office clerk over to become a clerk at that alternative high school, because now we have more students that are regularly going in and out of the building. We have a shift in needs of our special education IEP students from a middle school special educator, and our child outreach and early intervention personnel and our preschool personnel have identified that there is a cohort of learners of 4-year-old youngsters currently at SKIP who are in need of an all-day preschool program before transitioning into our kindergarten. A lot of research right now on that early learning gap, that program between, especially for special needs learners, between am I ready for kindergarten, and do I need, instead of a half-day program, a full-day program, so that when I get into kindergarten, I will be successful. Rhode Island Department of Education is requiring RIDE certification for preschool programs now, and in order to get RIDE certification, we are going to need to gently expand a couple of hours of our preschool program, and in order to do that, we need to reduce teacher assistance in one area to increase teacher assistance in another area. So not a budgetary program. Again, these are budget neutral shifts based on needs in other parts of the district. So this high school technology coach, it's not actually an additional salary. I'm taking another high school section reduction and I'm moving it into the technology coach. An elementary section reduction, I'm moving into a middle school literacy coach. And so, also as a footnote, not a part of the operational budget at all, but as required by RIDE certification, our early childhood coordinator must be increased to full-time. That will be utilized with grant funding outside of the district operational budget. I also put up, which seems to be a slide that always gets a lot of attention.
Carol has a question.
Oh, I just wanted to know how the accelerated math did in the 7th grade this year.
I think that we had some summer hiccups because youngsters who wanted to be considered, or whose parents wanted them to be considered, in either case, for the accelerated program, were nervous that they wouldn't have a chance to be considered. So that was an early concern. We inserted a waiver system, and then parents made a choice. We told them the data, we showed them what the success rate would likely be if this made sense for them at this time, and they got to make, you know, a personal decision along with the teachers. And I think they chose right. I mean, we haven't had youngsters who didn't do well and were sort of like put back, not that I'm aware of.
How many students did you have enroll?
We have, I want to say we have approximately one section on each team that is accelerated. And they vary in the amount of students that are in those sections. And in one team, I think we have a section and a half. We also are providing, we don't want these to be lockstep, so we're also providing opportunities to grow to be in one of these programs. So you weren't recommended for it in 7th grade, but boy, did you do a really good job in the regular 7th grade program. Do you want to try to be in that program even without a waiver? Do you want to ramp up your skills? Come to our summer program and we'll help you to get those skills if you would like to try. So that's new. Typically, summer school programs are for youngsters that need to be remediated. We're taking a look this year at summer programs in a different way.
So do you have to be in the 7th grade accelerated math to get into the 8th grade
No.
accelerated math? Oh, that's good. So you still have another
Certainly,
chance.
it's an advantage to be in the 7th grade accelerated math to get a date, because math is one skill built upon another. That part hasn't changed. But we don't want to discourage youngsters for, you know, we're not tracking. It's not like you get on the track and you can't get off. You know, we want youngsters to be able to, you can map out a different plan.
Because math, especially in the high school, to advance to like calculus, you almost have to be in the advanced 8th grade math.
So
So by what you're doing, you're getting more children into the higher math levels.
So
at the high school.
We're doing another pretty exceptional thing in all core departments at the high school this year, but it's even more exciting in math. The department chairs have created an individualized pathway option. So if a youngster wants to go slower or faster than a typical class, then they would sign up for that individualized pathway. And if you are an accelerated student, you could finish Algebra 2 by the end of December and then enroll in the next course. And that's an entirely different way of thinking than we've ever thought about coursework before. And so you don't have to start another math course in January. You could pick up an elective if you want to, and it's your choice. But if you are a youngster that needs a year and a half, then you take that year and a half. But when you're out, you know it solidly. And so it's built on what we learned this year about the math workshop success.
But do they come in, like, if they decide they want to switch over, do they come in midstream and have to catch up on?
Give me an example.
I guess I misunderstood you.
So they would come in September,
And
right?
then if by December they wanted to move on to the next level,
Then they would go into another individualized pathway
Okay.
next level.
okay.
So it would be really tough to get into the traditional pathway at midstream, but they could take an elective for the rest of that year and then hit the traditional pathway geometry the next year.
Okay.
If they found that this was kind of fun, but I fit traditional better. And we're working, the guidance counselors with the parents to say, what type of learner is your child? Are they a more traditional learner, or are they going to like an individual rate of learning?
So does this mean a different teacher come December? So you would be done with that math class and go on to another class?
Could
Is that
be.
what you're saying? So,
Or it might not be. So I could teach Algebra 1, and I could teach geometry in the individual pathway.
I mean, traditionally, it's what, Algebra 1, geometry, then Algebra 2, and
pre-calc,
then...
calc. And they don't get to Calc 2.
They don't, unless
Right.
they take the Algebra 1 in 8th grade, then they can
They
get...
don't get to, they don't
Well,
get to it
don't-
anyway,
They never get to 2.
but they're gonna now.
So 7th grade, they can get there. But even to... Wow.
And last night, we
But I still
unveiled
don't understand
plans.
how, what kind of class are they in?
It's going to
finish
be
in half
what's
year?
called a blended learning environment,
So they're
half
still in with the
computer,
same
but
class?
with the teacher.
They're with the same classroom teacher as the regular, say, Algebra 1 kids?
No.
Or they're not?
So I'm with the guidance counselor. I'm gonna look at my menu of offerings. I'm gonna sign up for traditional Algebra 2. Maureen is saying, you know what, I think I can do Algebra 2 by the end of December. I'm gonna sign up for individualized Algebra 2. John struggles with math. And so John, isn't that comforting for our viewing audience? So John is going to say, I'm not sure. I get some concepts very quickly, but sometimes when the rest of the class is picking up on it, I'm not. So I want to go at my own pace. Some concepts I go fast. Graphing, I get stuck in. Other concepts fast. Graphing comes again, I get stuck in. So John's going to sign up for the individualized. Not everybody in that room is on the same unit at the same time.
Right.
I have the same teacher. We're all doing some books, some computer work. We're going all through Algebra 2, but he's going on the different section that I'm going on, right? And so the idea is to hope that we're all finishing by the end of the semester or the end of the quarter or the end of the year, but you can accelerate or you can slow it down at your own pace is the idea.
Using John as the illustration of a math
Or John.
individual doesn't build confidence.
So this was my option. It was John or my boss.
What was scarier was she was teaching algebra.
No, you know what, I find this very interesting that you're addressing this tonight, because when I went to school, which was many, many moons ago, I went to a private school, but we took one class all day long, 7.5 weeks, or until we finished and we progressed at our own pace. I haven't seen that concept like that since, I mean, I graduated from high school like in the early 80s, but it was individualized learning, and if you needed help, you signed up for, no, but you signed up for a lecture. So you basically kind of taught yourself. So I think for the children that are moving ahead substantially, it's a wonderful opportunity. And I think for the children who want a little bit more help or ask for the help, it's also equally a wonderful opportunity.
It's also, I thank you for that piece of support. It's also exciting for the teachers, because there are some teachers that are really comfortable teaching in a traditional environment. We have to honor that. There are other teachers who are really comfortable teaching in a differentiated environment. We have to honor that too. And so there were teachers that sort of, when we started exploring this, saying, I can see myself in both paths or in one path over the other. We also explored last night, our high school's starting to explore international baccalaureate courses. And so would like to think of ourselves as maybe the first public high school in the state that might embark on this work. So great things are happening.
You guys are doing a good job.
Grace is getting teary now, and we're going to offer her a tissue in a moment. So, just choking up. So, I offer, yeah, there we go. So I offer this slide only so that it's in your packet, because often we're reminded that we are in an era of declining enrollment, but once the word gets out about our fabulous programs, that won't be for long. And often, I know early in my career here, there was worry that as students student enrollment was decreasing, are we being mindful that FTEs were decreasing? And so I wanted to give you that slide because it's been certainly asked for in the past. And then the last slide I put in is the budget discussion dates that have come and are going forward. So we know that after our evening with you tonight, we are scheduled to meet with you again. Did I put down the 13th? Yeah, it's, never mind. No, it's right. On the 9th and the 10th of April. Other than that?
Questions here at the town council table for Kristen, John, or any school committee member? Any questions for Steve? School committee, if you have any questions for us? Jonathan?
Close to wrapping up, maybe?
Not yet.
I do have a comment, but I don't want to go out of order.
If it's related to the budget, go for it.
Yeah, I guess I just want to touch on the meeting piece, because that's been out in the community a little bit, the number of meetings. And so just when we're looking at that last slide, these are being presented as, well, we've talked about it, January 14th, we talked about capital. We talked about the capital plan. We did not talk about this year's budget. And then the February 14th, I was allowed to make a comment of a few minutes, and there was really no discussion. So there was really only the one budget work session where this year's budget was discussed. Last year, there were 2 meetings where there was some budget discussion, but at the initial meeting, there really was no breakdown as to what the cuts were going to be. So while there were 2 meetings, and then part of a third, if I recollect, there may have been some discussion at the 3rd meeting that we actually adopted it. That we really started from behind because we didn't have all the information at the first meeting. And so I guess, I think that the public should be aware of that, because I think that it's out there to some extent that there's all these meetings. But some of the meetings that say budget, there's no budget discussion. And so, some of the things that we are doing with the schools are excellent, as what was just discussed. But the last budget season, we cut 34 full-time equivalent positions, which is about 6% of the staff. This year, we're cutting about 12 full-time equivalent positions, which is another 2% of the staff. And I think the enrollment over that time frame is 2 or 3%. So an 8% cut, 2 or 3% enrollment decline. And at the school committee table, the NECAP results have come out about a month ago. It has not been presented to us. So from a NECAP standpoint, we don't really know what the standings are. Basically, our results have gone pretty flat the last few years. We're still very strong. I don't want to say that we aren't, but they have gone pretty flat. But as this budget is being adopted with all these cuts, we haven't been compared. The school committee is not really aware of how we're compared to our other school districts. As I've looked at it, it seems like other school districts have caught us, and some have passed us. And so it's very troubling to me that we're talking about a 1%, we need a 1% appropriation increase from the town council, and really it has never been presented to the community or to the school committee or to the town council. If you could go, I'm just about done, if you could go with a 1.5% or 2%, maybe we'd only need to cut say, 20 positions or some such last year and maybe 8 this year, and that would be a better educational program for all of our children.
Thank you. I am pleased, and I've heard a lot of comments from the community with the amount of work that's gone into this budget, and I know that there's been a lot of work with John and Kristen working with, Trish and Steve, so I know that there's a lot of background work that's done, before it even gets to the table, and I appreciate all of that work. I know that questions that I've taken from the public, Kristen, is the language program that's going to be offered in 8th grade and how that's going to be delivered. And being a former middle school teacher, not having it in 7th grade, but just in 8th, there was some questions about that. So I didn't know if that program was fully, developed or still being worked on.
So the program plan is a Spanish one, French one. That's going to be offered, just as it would be offered this year in 9th grade. And youngsters will sign up for that, and they'll take it as a part of their regular 8th grade rotation. And Kirsten Stahl, who is the World Language Department Chair at the high school, has been working very closely with this World Language group at Curtis Corner, and with Pauline Lisi and Patty all to develop the amount of times in the schedule that students need to meet in order to have the same contact hours that you'd have in 9th grade. At the end of that year, youngsters can choose, and certainly with the recommendation of their teacher, will they then, in 9th grade, go on to take Spanish 2, which would be a choice, or do they want to transition to Italian 1 in 9th grade, or French 1, or do they want to repeat Spanish 1 again because they didn't quite have full competency? And that will be, an instructor's and sort of parent decision. And the guidance counselors will help the parents to decide what the next year's offerings will be. The following year, and again, it's a pilot, so you try it, and then it would have been nice to be able to offer all 3 of the languages that we offer at the high school to 8th graders, but scheduling-wise, adding 3 new teachers, it would kind of decimate our other itinerant offerings. We're not sure that French will run until we see what children choose. But the idea is that if it is successful, which we believe it will be, year 1 in 8th grade, then we're going to bring an offering down to 7th grade. Now, what will that look like? They have had discussions about, will it be then a program over 2 years, or will it be, as it is now, like a cultural language component, sort of like a cultural tour of all of the languages in 7th grade, and then 3 languages in 8th grade. We're not sure yet, but we're hoping it'll be a 7th and 8th grade language offering, and we're going to take our lead from that World Language Committee and the success that they demonstrate this year.
Thank you. That was an in-depth answer. Thank you. And then the other question that people have stopped me out in the community is the where that cut will be with the itinerant. Will it be music? Will it be art? And you've answered that. You don't know yet. You got to see where the course selections are. So, that's what's got to happen. So, did you want to do a little bit of elaboration on a conversation that you and I had with the Park assessment and the different offerings of the math? If the child takes, Algebra 1 in 9th grade and then is able to possibly take the Park assessment at the end of Algebra 1 versus waiting to 11th grade and then say, I know I had something to do with XY slope, but I can't really remember. Is there information that you're moving forward on that?
We had a really long conversation about this last night at the school committee, and we talked about the Park assessment and the state assessment and the NECAP assessment and which will count for graduation. And I guess the short answer is that right now NECAP is given to 11th graders and is connected to graduation requirements. Park implementation right now is a pilot, actually this month being piloted in South Kingstown and throughout the state to learn from the data that they get back. The state is piloting it, much like they did with the NECAP when that first came out. Park for high school is connected to a course, not to a age or a cohort. And so if you are, there's a park for Algebra 1, there's a park for Algebra 2, and there's a park for geometry. And so depending upon what age level you are, that's when you take the park assessment. So in speaking with Pauline Lisi last night, getting all of our information together, if you are a senior right now, you took the NECAP last year as a junior, and if you received a score of proficiency, then you fulfilled that component for graduation. If you did not, then you were allowed a retake last year, and if you gained, if you were significantly improved or met the cutoff score, then you received that pass. If not, you just took it again as a senior. And if not, there's a waiver program, okay? If you're a junior, same thing. They took them already, and they're sort of in that pipeline. For sophomores, so I expressed last night, my youngest is a sophomore. He would be, as a junior, now he's going to be in what is he in? He's pre-calculus next year. So he's like out of park, as far as I know. And so he won't have a park, or maybe he isn't. He could have a park option. I think the commissioner said he could take the park if he wanted to, and my response was, I'm sure he'd love that. That would be just right up Jake's alley. But he would, the NECAP would still be the test he would be given for graduation requirement. But the freshmen, they would not be eligible when they're juniors for the NECAP, because eventually the NECAP goes away, but then at what level, we're thinking Algebra 2, but that's not been confirmed. At what level is that the state going to say, yes, and it's at this level this year that will be the state's determined graduation requirement for the park. And so the school committee's discussion last evening was talking, quite frankly, about state assessment, because there's such confusion about what test, what year, and it's linked to graduation requirements, that their thinking last night was it's cleaner and clearer that if we're talking about state assessment linked to graduation requirements.
How do you keep the kids and the parents abreast of all of this and informed? Because, I mean, you must have to have seminars for the parents to say, this is what your kid has to do in 4 years to graduate. I mean, it was just like when you first introduced the portfolio. It took everybody like at least a year to figure out what the heck we were all doing and what the kids had to do, right?
4 years.
And we were still at it 4 years later, trying to make sure they had all the portfolio entries and...
So Bob McCarthy, our high school principal, and his team, and the guidance counselors and the teachers are really miraculous at this work. They know every child in the cohort and their families very, very well. And for this last round of youngsters who we knew were still in the pipeline, awaiting their graduation sort of information, we had to make a very well-coordinated plan of Bob will meet with 5 families, Kristen Klenk will meet with 5 families, maybe Rose Majika will meet with 5 families that they know very, very well, and sit down and go through and explain to them, this is what's going to happen, we're going to be here, we have a plan, this is where your child is, but we're lucky, we have a very talented cooperative staff who really has the kids' best interest in mind. We have a very few youngsters that are in that grouping of not meeting the NECAP expectations, and so it's manageable for us, as difficult as it is to keep track of. Yeah. We're not talking about hundreds of kids, and so I honestly wonder how high schools that have so many youngsters are able to do it. But it's consistency, it's messaging, it's having really trusting relationships with parents. But it's a lot of information, I mean,
Just
quite
listening
frankly,
to you right now is confusing about
Right.
who has to take what when. I mean,
My
I'd have to
oldest-
see it all written down and where is my kid as to what grade and what is he or she
My
have
oldest
to
son
do.
was supposed to be the first cohort, and I remember the sigh of relief when he was like, yeah, it's not me anymore. I went down, they told me, we've been, it's been delayed. And I came home said, it was delayed for me. And I said, I have another kid the next year. So it's tricky.
Really have to stay involved, and
And
parents
they're doing
don't.
that, I'm happy I'm over it.
I just want to make one other comment, and then Jonathan has a comment. At the town council table, there is the newsletter from the Education Exchange. I had an appointment with them at 4 o'clock today, and Mary said, bring this back to the town council. And Kristen, I just want to thank you for the work that the school department is also doing with the Education Exchange for the kids that, with the new legislative act with kids, dropping out of school. So that was another whole piece. We had Mary here in the town chambers, I believe it was Wednesday. So kudos to that working collaborative relationship on behalf of the students. Jonathan?
Yeah, I just wanted, we did talk about resolutions last night.
Is this related to the budget?
Well, we were just talking about the park resolution, so.
Oh, I thought you were talking about other resolutions.
Well, some of them were related to budget.
Okay.
I mean, I think most of them were, because they impact contracts and this kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And to be honest with you, I think just about everything relates to the budget. But anyways, is it our intent to have these resolutions forward to the town council, and I guess most specifically the park?
I'd like to answer that question. Monday night at the town council table, we talked about that, and I know that there's been some bills that I received on reading learning disabilities that I forwarded to Kristen, and she's going to share that with the school committee. And I informed our town council that if there's any, or asked our town council if you support any resolutions, please bring them up here. That you have our full support here at the town council table. So that was a discussion at our table at Monday's meeting. Michelle, do you want to grab a microphone, please? Thank you.
I thought I was loud enough. First of all, math teachers have been informed that when the park gets here, it will be Algebra 1 and Geometry, and they will take the test after they've completed the course.
That's the part that I just I'm so happy with.
Who knows if that's going to be the same tomorrow morning? I may get something different tomorrow morning. The other thing I wanted to say, and I think that the town council is aware of this, but we put together a school report card, is that what we called it?
Yes, we saw that.
Okay, we put together that school report card, and we intend to put another one together every year and make those available out in the community. And so these new programs that Dr. Stringfellow was talking about will certainly get highlighted in this year's version, and maybe we can recapture some of our declining enrollment and kind of entice people with exploring the IB program, with offering the accelerated math in the 7th grade, with offering the courses at the high school that they can take, courses that we can't offer a full class of, and also the fact that they can move through their programs faster if they're able to do so.
That's great. Any questions here from the town council? Any more questions from school committee? Jonathan?
I'm sorry I have so many questions, but I think that's why I ran, so I'm gonna keep at it. And
If we
so
can just be succinct, that would be
I
great.
appreciate your patience. Yeah, so, I mean, I think there are people opting out of our school system, all right? And I will state, as a school committee member, our schools are incredibly strong. I think we could be doing better. And the reality is people are opting out. I don't think we know why they're opting out. Some of the things that are being talked about tonight might pull people back in. We don't know, hopefully. But I do think that it's actually troubling to me that there's only 3 community members here, and most of our process has so little community involvement. So people, a lot of times elected officials say, oh, nobody's here, things must be going great. Well, if people are opting out, maybe it's because they feel like they can't come, they can't be heard, they can't be part of the process. I think they're frustrated with the amount of testing. I think they're frustrated with some of the decisions that have been made by the school department. And I think There's one other thing, but I just lost it, so I'll leave it with that.
I take,
Just the cuts.
right, with the comments, Jonathan, I mean, I'm all over this town, and people stop me. I think sometimes they still think that I'm on the school committee. I get a lot of phone calls, I pass them over to the school committee. I never hear, people frustrated with the testing or opting out. I know that when I was on the school committee, we did talk about, people leaving, maybe going to Hendricken and maybe doing an exit interview. I don't know if that ever came to fruition, but I don't hear, negative things about why people are leaving our system. So I don't know if there's other school committee members that are picking up on any comments, why people are opting out or transferring to another school. Brysa?
I don't know if this really speaks to that, but it does. I have a personal experience with a family that I know who were going to send their children to, I believe it was Hendricken, and we are offering a Chinese language program, and they specifically opted to send the kids who are in 8th grade now to South Kingstown High School next year for that reason. So I think the programs that we're talking about are extremely exciting, and I think that they are things that happen at private schools. That the fact that we're talking about the IB program, the fact that we're talking about foreign language as early as 7th grade, all of those kinds of things, the offerings that we might have in Latin or a Spanish 5 or those kinds of things, I think I think they will keep people here, and I think they will bring people here. So it remains to be seen, but I think it's very exciting.
And I think there has also been a return with some of the children involved in the charter school. Is that correct? So there has been a return of some children that have left. And I know that I did recently have a conversation with, a parent that had a child with a disability that did choose to, leave the district, and it was to, a private school. But I don't hear those things, and believe me, I get a lot of people stopping me throughout the community.
Yeah, I may not, I know, I will defer that you are out and about and have more connections than I do, but I've got a couple. And I know people are opting out.
Have they told you the reasons? Is it because of the testing?
I think testing is a piece of it. I think it's just a general frustration with all the requirements. And, are the teachers focused on teaching? Or they just, and we had a professor come to our meeting last night and talking about we need to get away from this obsession with measurement. So that's in society. This is not like.
And that starts at the Rhode Island Department of Ed. I mean, and I think that
Yeah,
there's been a
Rhode
real
Island-
advocacy here at this school committee table to work with the Rhode Island Department of Education along with other districts to try to make some changes. But
Well,
I want to move on
I
to
just-
your next question too. So
Well, I disagree with that, but I don't know. People. So I'll give you an example. People were frustrated with the looping change. So I don't know if anybody opted out, but there's been a lot of frustration in the community about that. And people feel like that change was made. It was made, and then it was announced. So I got emails from probably 4 or 5 people about that for this year. Okay, so I don't know if anybody left, but there is frustration. Another thing, if you remember, how many students at the high school said, we don't like the fact that they abandoned the staggered schedule. So that now they'd have 5 out of the 7 days, I believe it is, they start off their day with the same class. And so hundreds of students, okay? So I understand, I'm not saying that you're not talking to people, and I hear what you're saying, but hundreds of students, which represents hundreds of families, were frustrated with that decision. People weren't involved in that decision. It just happened.
all right. Do you have any other comments? I just want.
I have one general, but you're probably not going to talk about it because it's too relevant.
Okay. What I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to open the microphone to any questions from the public, and then I'm going to move to other matters of interest. And I know that this morning I was at a meeting with Jeff Broadhead preparing for the Washington County Regional Planning Council meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30, and we got talking, and he asked if he could come tonight. We both agreed he's going to come, and he's going to give you a little snapshot of the streetlights. But Keith, please, welcome.
Keith Forhaven. I'll be brief. First off, the last time I was at this mic, I had made a statement about funding for charter students and public school students, and that was an incorrect statement, so I made that statement in this forum. I'd like to take an opportunity in this forum to correct myself. But my point about charter schools being a variable in a conversation about closing an elementary school still holds. Secondly, I'd like to voice support for this budget, especially the technology aspect. I think it's cautious. I think it's a step forward. I think LA's proven that if you jump right into computers, you can end up wasting a lot of money and not getting what you're after. And I think technology is going to be part of our educational system in the future, so we might as well get on with it and start moving forward and really figuring out how it's going to fit into our system. And lastly, I'd like to address some of the conversation that took place at our school committee meeting last night. I felt it was inappropriate to editorialize on somebody else's intentions. I would like to stand up here publicly and say that all of my elected officials do the best for this town and have the town's interest at heart in all the decisions they make. And I think it's inappropriate to make those statements. Otherwise, I think it's editorializing, and I don't see how it moves our town forward. Thank you.
I think you probably moved us to other matters of interest and concern. Any other comments from the public? All right, I'm going to move to other matters and concern, as I think Keith has moved us there, and I'm just going to open the microphone if Jeff, you'd like to come. And while you're here, Jeff, I don't know if there's any initiatives that you have available for the school committee. I know that you've worked with school committees before, so if there's anything that you wanted to share, here they are.
Thank you very much, Madam President, which I get to say tomorrow morning too, because you're the president of our board as well. And you mentioned we have an 8:30 meeting. A half an hour ago, I got an email from Kettle Pond saying that they're not going to open till 10 o'clock. Now, we can't get to some of our guests because I have the cell phones for my board members, but not to our guests. So luckily, I called, and I do have a key to the building, and I said, I'm coming in. And they said, okay. So we'll be there. I don't know if it will be plowed or what, but anyway, I promised I'd only take 3 minutes. I'll be simply as quickly as I can. South Kingstown and its fellow communities started the Planning Council. And they did it to serve projects and purposes that cross town boundaries, those projects that a town can't do all of its own. And I'm just here to ask South Kingstown to pay its full dues. The dues are set by our board. They were set before I came and have not changed in that time. It's $6,000 for the larger towns, $3,000 for the smaller towns. The only exception is Block Island, because they get to the opportunity to fly to our meetings, and they have one of the best attendance rates. So we give them a little break on the dues. But I'm asking you to pay your full $6,000. I think it's only fair to the other towns who do pay their full dues. But you need to know what you're going to get for it. And I'll be very brief on that, is just fiscal matters. There's a lot of meetings we hold, forums that we hold. We testify. We do lots of things on behalf of all the communities. But the two big fiscal things, one was years before I came, so I can take no credit at all for it. But our board wrote the change to the real estate conveyance tax, which has given South Kingstown and other towns millions of dollars over the years. This year, or last year, I looked at our streetlights and realized that you can't even put an LED light in. You know, you can manage streetlights. South Kingstown has managed its lights better than any other municipality in the state. You've reduced your costs a larger amount than any other town. And yet you're still paying way more than what that service ought to cost. You can't even put an LED light into the streetlights, even though it will use half the energy or 60% less energy, and will last for 5 to 10 to 20 years. So we wrote legislation. We just said, this is wrong, this has got to get fixed. I wrote the Municipal Streetlights Investment Act. We got it passed. The legislation, we thought we were being smart. We said that the Public Utilities Commission has to finish by November 15th. By my calendar, that was months ago, and we're still at the Public Utilities Commission. And thank goodness for the League of Cities and Towns, which has helped us financially with the legal costs, because it's in the municipality's interest to resolve this quickly. And I'll show you why in a moment. It's in National Grid's interest to delay it. National Grid makes a profit, not costs, not revenue, but profit of $675,000 a month on streetlights. They're supposed to make a 7% profit. They're a regulated utility. They're making a 400% profit on streetlights at the expense of the municipalities. I think it's wrong, and we're working to change it. Bringing it local to South Kingstown, you can save, you're currently, and I don't know what's in your budget for streetlights, the figures I'm using are figures National Grid gave us as part of the filings at the Public Utilities Commission. This is what they think you're paying, and I know that at least in one town it's off by quite a bit. They think you're paying $180,000 a year for your street lighting in the S14 tariff. Now maybe that's off by $10,000, $20,000, it doesn't matter. It's what they tell us we're paying, and so we're working off those numbers. We have asked them to look at South Kingstown's numbers because your purchase price didn't look right to me. There are 3 towns in the state where the purchase price can't be paid out of savings in the first year, but you can pay a lot of it. They estimated that your purchase price was $88,000 to buy your whole streetlight system. If you'd buy it and you use PRISM, which is the Planning Council's program for management, your costs will be reduced by about $76,000 a year. Now that's a little more than the dues we're asking, and that's going on into perpetuity. That kind of savings, even if I am wildly wrong and estimated only half, it's still $35,000 to $40,000 a year savings. And we believe our numbers are accurate. Our numbers are based on actual contracts in Massachusetts with the same vendors who would come to Rhode Island using the same electricians, our local electricians. They're real numbers. These are not made up numbers. So with that, I simply am happy to answer any questions, but I want to let you know we're working hard on your behalf, and we'd like to ask your support. Plus, the last thing is, our offices are right in Wakefield here. All of our money is spent. Half our meetings are at Phil's Restaurant or the Muse, so we support our local businesses as well. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
I just have to say, with all due respect, Mr. Burrhead, I'm not sure what this has to do with the school budget that we're here to discuss tonight.
Nothing. I was asked by your president to come tonight, or offered the opportunity, because I was not able to come to the previous night. It has nothing to do with schools. We have worked with schools on some projects, not with South Kingstown schools, in the past. We're not working with the schools on anything right at the moment. Well, there are some streetlights on school property which will be affected by this. I don't know if it's in South Kingstown. We've been approached by several towns to say, our school lights are metered under the streetlights tariff. Can we do those as well? That's something we have to look at.
Okay, other questions?
Can I ask a question? Do you have a comparative analysis in terms of, you must, and we may have gotten it when we met with you initially. I'd like to see a comparative analysis between National Grid's fees and charges for lighting versus what your proposal is. Is that something that you can provide to us?
I just happen to have it right here. Could you ask a better question? I realize this is far away, so I got to stay where I can be on the microphone. If you can see this, the leftmost column is what you're currently paying for streetlights. It's 2 components. The bottom is what you pay per kilowatt hour. So that's the money that you pay to National Grid to distribute the electricity for the wires. And then it's the power charge that you pay to Direct Energy through the League of Cities and Towns energy aggregation program. That stays the same if you purchase your lights. Anything you pay per kilowatt hour. What National Grid also charges you is this red portion, which is called a fixture or a facility charge. Statewide, that's about 2/3 of the cost of streetlights. On state average, that's $94 per light per year. We can do it for $25.
Who are you doing it for?
We are doing it, we will do a solicitation for a contractor. The contractors are well-known. In fact, we polled, Massachusetts is way ahead of us on this. We polled all 51 towns in Massachusetts that have purchased their lights and do private maintenance like this. We expected we'd get a nice list of contractors. We got one. 50 of the towns use the same contractor. It used to be called Republic ITS. It's now called Siemens. They handle in Massachusetts, New York, over 1 million streetlights. We have prices from them. We have signed contracts from them with other towns, so we've used those for pricing. We've also got pricing from a group called CityLume, which is a worldwide streetlights management. They manage 2.5 million municipal streetlights. We will get prices from several others, but those are the two we have so far, and their prices were, you couldn't tell the difference from one to the other. Where there is a difference is if a small town tries to sign up, or a town the size of South Kingstown, or a town the size of Providence. There is a differential in the price. We probably can't be any cheaper than what Providence can get, but we will be cheaper than what South Kingstown could get on its own.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I couldn't have answered the question, so I'm glad you're here. Any other questions? Any questions from the school committee before we adjourn? Jonathan?
I wasn't sure if it was just for this gentleman or not. You saying?
Do you have any questions for?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Jeff.
I do have I just would like
Please.
to give me a couple minutes.
Yep.
I would just like to put on the record, my concerns. These are other matters and concerns, but
As long as it's related to the budget. Actually, we're in other matters of concern, so go for it.
Well,
Okay.
I think we should get back to the school budget. I think that's what we're here for tonight. I'm not sure why we're going off topic. I'd like to get back to the school budget.
Did you have more questions?
But I'd like to say something about the school budget. Now we're off on something
Yeah,
else.
I've got some closing remarks for the school budget as well. Jonathan, could you be very brief, so we can get back to the school budget?
I'll do the best I can. And I'm looking at the name tags. I hope that Scott Miller, to my left, doesn't get in trouble because his name tag is in front of me.
Okay.
All right.
Don't quote that in the paper then.
All right, so I just, this came up at recent budget meetings. This has to do with student enrollment, and student enrollment has to do with the budget because how many students we have to educate is a big piece of what our budget's going to be. So, and I know how these things roll forward. My opinion is a lot of officials don't necessarily want to have a larger conversation for whatever reason. And I think that we should be having a larger conversation. It doesn't have to be solved in one night. It doesn't have to be solved this year, but something that we should be talking about because it has come up in this budget cycle, last budget cycle, that if enrollment continues to decline, a school is going to close, and the vice chair of this school committee and the superintendent this budget cycle and the last budget cycle have both said that if it continues to decline, we're going to do another reconfiguration committee. And that's a huge amount of time. It takes away from student achievement. It does impact the budget. So I think we should be talking about that. What does the town have to do with it? I've talked to this in previous meetings. I'm going to say that it specifically says in the growth management plan, 2011 to 2013, specifically says that lessening student impacts on the town's school system capacity was the driving force in crafting the growth management program in the first instance. And I hope that the press will cover that because this is a critical piece of the discussion. I just want to say quickly, previous reporting, that where the community gym may end up being built was going to be 50 affordable units. There was reporting in the Independent from 2007 that the Catholic Church wanted to build affordable units. They were talking about changing the density so that there could be even more affordable units built, and instead the town bought it. I'm not saying it was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, but it did happen, and that does impact enrollment and the amount of housing. And
Could just wrap it up.
I just want to say, in 2010, when they were looking at closing one of the elementary schools, looked like it was going to be Wakefield School abandoning the neighborhood elementary school model. It was brought forward. It was actually reported in the Independent, so I'm not being critical. If you don't remember, you don't remember. But the vice chair, who at that time, Mrs. Mosier, who at that time was a community member, brought forward a proposal saying we could do a configuration. She wanted to advocate for a configuration, so I'm assuming, I don't know, but that's why we should be talking about it. If we do another configuration committee, is that what she's planning, to close Curtis Corner? Because that's what she,
Jonathan,
yes.
could you just wrap it up? Because really, you're going into things, and I stated this Monday night at the town council meeting, things back in 2007 and 2009, the town had a totally different look. And I don't appreciate you going back, to taking things, and I know that you've given us to the school committee with, quotes from Ray Samosha from years ago on a committee that we weren't privy to. So I would appreciate not having those comments here.
Okay, well,
I do want to say that the building, I know that we're in other matters of concern, and I know that we all want to get back to comments from the town council here about the school committee budget. But we're not here to have a discussion about, talking about education in specific buildings. I think that this school committee, along with the joint work done with the town and this town council, and I said it Monday and I'll say it again, can't ask for a more supportive town council than what you have. And you're zooming in on, focusing in on closing of a building. It's not on the table. I don't know how we can solve a problem when something is not a problem. Okay, if that is going to be down the road, I'm sure that this town council will be very supportive. We were all there in the meetings. There was the Responsible Action Committee formed, and you had a lot of support. So I don't want to generate a whole dialogue tonight if it becomes, something on our agenda. You have us there 100%. But I don't think this is the proper time or the place to be fixating on closing a building. We're here to talk about quality education. School committee's purpose is to provide that for its students, and I feel as though you have a town council that has supported school committee initiatives to support quality education. I don't want to focus in on something negative with, this time, closing a school building. And if we can just move past that, I think we'll all be in better shape. It's been a lot of work that has been done that has been fabulous, and we want to start singing those praises of the work that has been done. So, and we all want to comment. So if we could move on, I would appreciate it.
If I could, I will wrap this up.
Yes.
I don't know if you're trying to make it, I'm taking it that you're trying to make it that I'm saying something that I'm not saying. I'm saying start a conversation about the population, affordable housing, how that impacts enrollment. I am not fixated on whether or not a school closes. I'm reacting to conversation between other elected officials in public meetings this budget cycle and last budget cycle, that people are concerned about declining enrollment and we may need to reconfigure. That's what I'm working off of. I'm not fixated on whether a school closes or not. I'm saying have a larger conversation, and my final point is that I think the community does support and would support the concept of a larger discussion, because the Larchwood Inn is a case in point that building has sat falling deeper and deeper into disrepair, and people in the community have approached you, and I'm sure they're talking to you on the street about this, that the town council, what could the town council have done? Could it have been more proactive? Could this town have been more proactive on that topic? So that's a specific case in point that people would like their elected officials to look down the road. Don't just look at, are we talking about this month? Because right here in these last two cycles, we have talked about in the next budget cycle or two, reconfiguring, potentially reconfiguring the schools.
All right, want to let somebody else speak? Maureen?
I just want to repeat again that we thank you very much for, your support. The conversations that we have had, as a school committee and the previous conversations that we have had with you. Thank you again, and I just hope that, we can answer any lingering questions that you might have at this particular point.
Any parting comments from town council members? Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the school committee, and I also like to thank the town council. I think we're doing what our job is to do. If I read the mission of RIDE, our job is to make sure that our kids get the best education possible with our resources at hand. There's no way around it. Maybe fewer teachers, maybe fewer facilities, maybe more technology, maybe less. I don't have all the answers to that. But I think we've done everything right here to focus on the child. And the other thing, I'm kind of a numbers person, but I am frightened statewide when I see the $1.5 billion talked about for the improvement of facilities, the schools and the rest of the state that need repair, remodeling, every combination, maybe should be torn down. And I take a look at our budget out 6 years, Steve, I've forgotten, was it $6 million in joint effort between the school committee and the council the last few years. We need that facility audit. We need it to be up to date. And the fact that it's so little money, but that the taxpayers this year are stepping to the plate. I believe it's well over $900,000 this year. Almost a 6-year straight line effort here to make sure that we have the best facilities and the most improved facilities in the state. And that's very important, but that also leads to another issue. You know how the state takes advantage of those that succeed in doing well. So I can see the next equation now is going to be some kind of a new capital budget by the state RIDE people that say, you South Kingstown folks, well, you're ahead of the curve, you've done it all right, so we're going to find another way to take more money from you. Hopefully that won't be the case, but we really do it right. So school committee and council members, I thank you on behalf of the kids, because that's where this is all directed.
Meg?
I'm
Carol?
gonna,
Waiting.
I thought you said no.
I'm going to keep this very brief, too. I'm just going to piggyback on what Jim said, but what I started with. I think you all have done a wonderful job in protecting the schools, your position on the school committee, and what we need in terms of the budgeting process. You've kept things relatively lean and tight, and I know it takes a mountain to do that type of work, so I can't say I can speak for the whole council, but I can speak for myself, and I thank you. I really do thank you.
Carol?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you all, school committee, Kristen, John. Not only have we received less state funding, you've kept the budget very reasonable and very tight, and you've kept all the programs intact. And as a matter of fact, you've increased some exciting new programs, introduced new programs, as we spoke tonight about foreign language, math, technology. So I really think you're doing a good job and you're on the right track. And it's exciting to hear how excited you all get. And I know the parents and the kids, that must breed more excitement throughout the community. So in the end, it's about the kids and what kind of people they become, college students, what kind of jobs they get, technical careers, whatever. But we put them on the road to whatever they want to do in life. It's a good background. So, thank you.
Well,
I just want to say that the one comment you always hear about South Kingstown is they have great schools. Yeah. That's universal. That's a universal comment that you hear all the time. They've got great schools. So, thanks for all the hard work.
My parting comments is, I appreciate the opening remarks from, Dr. Carter with the mission statement, and your 3 goals are just, hit the nail right on the head to focus in on student learning here in South Kingstown. Tonight, I was really excited about, switching over to the park and really zooming in on, I know that, Kristen and I have many, many conversations, and focusing in on the kids that are really not doing well on some of the state testing, and you really have geared your whole math alignment with trying to make success for all children. And that's a feat, a mountain, huge. And you people have really, you're climbing the mountain, doing the best for the kids. And that truly, from a former educator, is just dynamite. So the technology plan with that digital, 2 summers ago, last summer, I went back to school at URI, and this wiki space and all this stuff, and you're right, everybody's showing up with their computers. I was blown away. So shifting over to the digital, span for getting our kids ready for, college, I can't thank you enough for doing that. And the budget shifts that you've made, to shift positions rather than cut some staff. My hat's off. Echo everything that was said here at the table. So in parting, again, Kristen and John and Steve and Trish, all working together, the school committee, the town council, all of the town staff, and the school department staff. I've never seen us in a better place. Been doing this for a long time, and hats off. Thank you very much. Please.
I just wanted to mention one more thing, and we don't have to get into a discussion about it, but I'm very excited about the new courtyard at the high school and the progress that's going to be made there, and we'll have to talk about that some other time. But that's, that went unmentioned tonight, and I think that's really going to be a showcase for this high school throughout the state. So I know you've done a lot of work on that also.
Great work. Please, Raisa.
I just want to clarify, and I know Carol knows that's not part of the budget. They've
Oh, I know.
received, they've received a tremendous
Other
amount of
matters
grant
of-
funding, and I didn't want any confusion about that.
No,
But
you're
yes,
right. I'm
it's-
sorry I didn't
No, that's
mention
okay.
that.
It's
There's
an
no
incredible,
town money,
yes.
no taxpayer money
Right.
coming into that.
Right. It
It's
is
all
an
grants
incredible-
and private donations.
Yes, okay.
But it will be very impressive.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We officially adjourned at 9 o'clock. Thank you.